I was on my knees in my own yard with a Belgian Malinois tearing into my arm so hard I felt the teeth hit bone, blood soaking into my azaleas, while my neighbor, Lieutenant Marcus Vance, stood watching with folded arms and a smile that said he was enjoying every second. I wasn't resisting. I was doing the only thing a person can do when a trained attack dog lunges for your throat. But he kept yelling, "Stop resisting," loud enough for the neighbors hiding behind their curtains. Hours earlier, it had been a peaceful Sunday. My name is Elias Thorne, a man who once handled geopolitical crises but came to Ashford Heights for a quiet life, to plant trees and feel the soil under my hands. I was settling a cedar sapling when Vance marched over with his badge clipped to his belt and his K9 Fury vibrating on the leash. When I introduced myself and said I lived there, he laughed like it was a joke he'd been rehearsing. "People like you don't buy on Sycamore Pass," he said, stepping closer, insisting I show my hands and get off the property as if I'd broken into my own yard. I tried to de-escalate, but the word itself lit something bitter in him. He unclipped the leash and barked one command, "Apprehend," and the dog launched. I blocked my throat with my forearm and went crashing backward into the bushes, Fury's jaws locked on bone, while Vance watched without a hint of restraint. Neighbors watched from windows, phones recording, no one intervening. When a backup officer, Sterling, arrived, Vance fed him a script instantly. I was a trespasser, aggressive, and had assaulted the K9. Sterling pointed his weapon at me and shouted orders impossible to obey while the dog was still attached to my arm. Finally, Fury was called off, and as I tried to get up, Sterling and Vance shoved me down, cuffed me, and Vance whispered, "Welcome to Ashford Heights, boy," like he owned the street. At the precinct, the stale-smelling processing room turned into a performance where officers wrote statements like the world's dullest fiction. Imminent threat, resisting, assaulting police property. Then Chief Lars Bergman arrived. Smooth voice, polished uniform, false empathy. He recited charges with a smile. Multiple felonies, a magistrate ready to bury me, a deal waiting if I cooperated. His deal was simple. Plead to something small, forfeit the house, disappear. If I refused, he implied accidents happened in county lockup. I knew the tone. Men in power who confuse immunity with eternity. They thought they'd broken me, but their threats only woke up skills I'd spent years trying to retire. I took mental inventory, door timings, guard patterns, camera blind spots. Hours later, Sterling told me I had one phone call, local numbers only. They didn't know the number I dialed wasn't on any phone bill. When the line clicked, I reported, "Nomad weather in Ashford turned hostile," declaring red contingency on Grid 9. Immediate sanitation authorized. Then I hung up. Nomad is me. Red contingency means a command-level asset. Me is under extrajudicial threat on domestic soil. Sanitation means deploying the unit I lead, Vigilance Alpha. They're not law enforcement. They don't negotiate. They remove corrupted systems with quiet efficiency. 28 miles away, Captain Serafina Voss woke up her team. Sniffer, our systems genius, tore through the sheriff's department data. Body cam files, bank trails, complaints buried under bureaucratic dust, shell companies tied to developers. Harvester and Shadow infiltrated town, planting mics and tiny cameras in the chief's office, the break room, Vance's home. Within hours, Vigilance Alpha had a full blueprint of Ashford County corruption. Bergman ran a property forfeiture racket. Vance was his brutal enforcer. Magistrates rubber-stamped whatever narrative the department produced. Worse, Sniffer captured audio of officers planning an accident for me that very night. Voss didn't wait. She activated a bondsman who unknowingly works for us. The man posted the exact bail they thought no one could match. I was released to Vance's annoyance, silent as he tried to get a reaction from me. Outside, a black sedan with Shadow and Harvester waited. They took me to a safe house above an abandoned bookstore where a medic stitched my arm while Voss briefed me through a secure feed. We had enough evidence to bury them through official channels. Years of hearings, slow justice, appeals. But I told her no, not this time. This wasn't about trials or courts. I wanted something swift. I wanted a mirror held up so close that the rot inside Ashford Heights had nowhere left to hide. And that's where the real operation began. Unfinished, unfolding, and about to turn Ashford Heights inside out. Vance wouldn't resist returning to my house to prove he still owned the town, and that was exactly the pressure point Vigilance Alpha needed. So we prepared the stage with calculated silence as evening fell and Ashford Heights pretended to be a peaceful suburb again. My team swept the house to ensure Vance hadn't planted evidence. He hadn't, because men like him relied on intimidation, not intelligence. Then micro cameras were placed in the entryway, kitchen, living room, and hallway while harvesters settled on the balcony and shadow disappeared into the tree line. When everything was in place, I walked in with a fake sling to sell vulnerability, left the front door unlocked, and sat with a single lamp glowing like a quiet invitation. It didn't take long for Vance's dark car to crawl up my driveway, as if it owned the asphalt. He entered without knocking, tasting the air like a predator. He announced his threats casually. Sign papers, take a plea, surrender the house, or the county would teach me the rules. But when I stood up without the sling, the shift in atmosphere was immediate. He smirked until 6 red dots appeared on his chest and throat, then 8, as Vigilance Alpha materialized from the shadows with rifles steady and eyes focused. Watching him realize he was no apex predator was like watching glass crack under heat. His breath trembled, and he stammered questions about legality and authority. I laid out his mistakes, assuming I was alone, assuming the town belonged to him, assuming his badge shielded him from consequence. Then opened my federal credential case and let him see exactly who he had attacked. Voss entered with a tablet showing Chief Bergman zip-tied and hooded, already in our custody with his drives mirrored and his secrets archived, and I told Vance the truth. The chief, Sterling, and the desk sergeant were already detained, evidence was indexed, and federal vehicles were minutes away. His knees collapsed, and he whispered for mercy, but I told him he had walked willingly into my home to threaten me and now had to answer for it. Vigilance Alpha restrained him cleanly, clinically, without cruelty or theatrics, and as he trembled on my floor, his entire corrupt network unraveled like rotten thread. By morning, Ashford Heights awoke to a precinct surrounded by unmarked SUVs, federal jackets, and agents carrying clipboards with the confidence of people who already had everything they needed. The news described sweeping anti-corruption operations. Prosecutors listed civil rights violations, racketeering, coercion, falsified reports, and evidence tampering. Residents filled the community center that afternoon, some angry, some relieved, many shocked into honesty as they finally spoke about years of small abuses, sons roughed up for attitude, donations required for permits, property seized and never returned, threats delivered behind polite smiles. Their voices carried the weight of quiet suffering, and as they finally acknowledged the rot that had been choking their neighborhood, many cried for what they had tolerated and for what might finally end. I watched the broadcast from my living room, arm bandaged and aching, knowing that men like me never take credit publicly. My house, once meant to be a sanctuary, felt like a battlefield with the smoke just starting to clear. When the sun dipped below the rooftops, I packed a small bag, locked the door, and listened to the latch click like punctuation at the end of a sentence carved from necessity, not desire. And here's the truth that lingers. Was it justice or revenge? When a system is so brazenly corrupt that its enforcers discuss accidents in lockup, does playing by the rules do anything but feed the machine? Vigilance Alpha didn't operate through courtrooms or committees. We cut rot out before it spread. Some will say we went too far. Others will say we didn't go far enough. For me, the line between order and intimidation isn't drawn by the badge, but by the intent behind it. And the men who once ruled this town used theirs like weapons. Their fall wasn't vengeance. It was correction, swift, precise, overdue. And as I walked away from the house I had fought for, I knew Ashford Heights would heal. But I also knew I couldn't stay to watch it happen, because men like me don't live in the places we fix. We just make sure others finally can.